Do you want to know what kind of bowler type you are? Are you rev dominant? Are you speed dominant? Are you balanced? Are you not sure? I'll give you a couple tips to figure out what kind of bowler you really are. Let's start with an explanation of different types of bowlers. So there are three main types that we like to use around bowling right now. There is rev dominant, speed dominant, and balanced bowlers. Now, what does this truly mean? Two of the most important numbers to know about your bowling game are your rev rate and your speed, your ball speed specifically. So your ball speed is labeled as the speed that you're throwing a bowling ball off of your hand. So if you look at a monitor at a bowling alley, it usually has a ball speed, but that's when the ball is hitting the pins. So if you add about 1.5 to 2 miles per hour onto this, that's your true ball speed. Now, what is a rev rate? A rev rate or revolution rate is the amount of rotations per minute that your ball is hitting when it's going down a lane. So this is very hard to track, unfortunately. There's a bunch of different guides out there to do it on your own, or there's also different apps that can help you do it. But in general, it's how many rotations your ball has when going down the lane. Normal numbers for an RPM are between 200 and all the way up to 600 RPM for bowlers. So now let's talk about the different kinds of bowlers. So first of all, we're going to start with a rev dominant bowler. A rev dominant bowler means that his revolutions outweigh his ball speed. So in general, rev dominant bowlers are going to have to play deeper on a lane, and they're going to have a problem getting their ball to stop hooking. Some of the most common rev dominant bowlers currently in just your regular bowling alley games are going to be two-handers and no-thumb bowlers. They are going to be more notorious than not to be rev dominant compared to speed dominant. Now, rev dominant can also mean that your speed is very low and your revs is just a little bit higher. So an example of this is senior bowlers. A lot of senior bowlers have a problem with bowling balls hooking too much because their ball speed is so low. So rev dominant does not exactly mean that your rev rate is in the 500s, is in the range of Jason Belmonte and Jesper Svensson. A rev dominant bowler can be somebody who's 80 years old in a senior league that just has very low ball speed. All right, let's talk about speed dominant bowlers. So speed dominant bowlers on the other side of the coin are ones where your ball speed outweighs your rev rate. So this is really common among one-handers, especially people with lower rev rates, but it can also happen for taller bowlers. So if you're taller and it is much easier to throw it hard compared to soft when you have long arms, and your rev rate just cannot match your actual speed. So those are the most common speed dominant bowlers. There are very few speed dominant two-handed bowlers or no thumb bowlers. Even senior bowlers, there's a handful, but not many. One common group is female bowlers. A lot of female bowlers are actually more speed dominant compared to rev dominant. So how do you actually figure this out? So I found a very fantastic guide from Motive that shows what is a true balanced bowler. Balanced bowler is where your rev rate and your ball speed match very closely. According to them, 17 miles per hour and 3 to 350 RPM is a balanced bowler. Then for every mile an hour above this, your rev rate has to increase by 50. So if your ball speed off your hand is 17, 300 to 350 rev rate is balanced. If you get up to 18, then your rev rate has to jump from 350 to 400 and so on and so on and so on. So why do you need to know this number? Why does this number truly matter? Well, when picking a bowling ball, you should know if you're rev dominant or speed dominant. In general, a rev dominant bowler does not need the strong, asymmetric, giant bowling balls. They don't need the extreme envies. They don't need the harsh realities. They don't need anything like that. They don't need the jackal ambushes. They want to stick to the medium smooth, medium sharp balls and then lower than that. So for all my Arsenal guides, if you're a rev dominant bowler, you probably don't need those strong bowling balls. Now, again, on the other side of the coin, speed dominant bowlers generally don't need the weaker balls. They don't need the hustles. They don't need the vibes. They need the big asymmetrical balls to be able to get their ball to hook. So knowing what kind of bowler you are, what game you match up with, should determine what your arsenal looks like. Now, it's all customizable, of course. If you're practicing, trying to fix things, that is something always good to focus on. In general, most PBA bowlers are a little more rev dominant, but not extremely. So if you're trying to aim for something, I would go for a slightly rev dominant, but not too extreme where you can't keep any ball on the lane. Now, by knowing this, when looking at all my Arsenal guides, hopefully that helps you pick the right bowling balls. If you have any questions, leave them down below in the comments. I'll answer anything and everything you guys have to this. Otherwise, we'll have a lot more bowling tips coming similar to this. Thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure you subscribe and you'll be the first to know about any of these videos coming out in the future.